Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Thanksgiving edition of the Off the Charts Football Podcast. I'm Scott Spratt from Sports Info Solutions, joined as always by Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders. We're actually recording a day early this week because, Aaron, I'm not sure about you, but I'm planning to spend tomorrow eating a lot of food and watching a lot of football. I hope your plans are similar.
Yes, definitely. I always enjoy the negotiation of when are we going to have dinner and which part of the games do we want to miss? That's always an important part of Thanksgiving. I guess I would say less so if you live on the West Coast, but now that they have an 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific game, that's not true. It used to be on the West Coast, if you had a late Thanksgiving dinner, you could see both games first. Now you can't because there's 3 of them.
Well, I'm going to recommend everyone watch the Panthers-Cowboys game. I mean, obviously that's the one that I'm most excited about, but I think that could be pretty compelling.
I absolutely agree with you, and I find the fact that the original Las Vegas line for this game had Dallas favored to be insane. I know it's moved to a pick'em.
People jumped on that pretty quickly, I think.
It's still a little insane, but not quite as insane. I understand that Tony Romo is good and a major improvement at quarterback for Dallas, but I think people don't understand that the rest of the team is still not that great. Their defense is below average. Their special teams are average. The running back is not as good as it was last year, so it's not last year's Dallas Cowboys. They could still beat Carolina. I mean,
for sure.
Any given Sunday, it's the NFL, but Dallas is not suddenly one of the top teams in the league just because Romo's back, because it helps to have defense and special teams.
Meanwhile, we're going to talk a little bit about the Panthers later in the show and something interesting that happened with the playoff projections on footballoutsiders.com. But before we get to the topics, I want to let everyone know that the Off the Charts Football Podcast is presented to you by fantasyinsiders.com. They are your source for daily fantasy sports content. They believe that accuracy matters, and it shows since they've won the daily fantasy accuracy competition for the last 3 seasons. If you're serious about DFS or want to become serious, go to fantasyinsiders.com for free educational content and premium memberships. Aaron, we're not going to start with the Panthers because we're going to start with a couple of 5-5 teams that, at least for me, have sort of snuck up on me and sort of entered into the playoff race. The first of those teams is the Houston Texans, who are now and still are tied with the Colts for the best record in the AFC South. The other team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are tied with Seattle just 1 game back of the imploding Falcons for the second wildcard spot in the NFC. Let's stick with Houston first. Aaron, I feel like the perception around Houston is that J.J. Watt is so good that he's sort of dragging this team that's otherwise without talent into playoff contention. But I think I'm going to quibble with that slightly. But let's talk about Watt first, because I feel like he's been really exceptional this year. Has he looked as good this year as he has the last 2 years when he's obviously been far and away the best defensive player in football?
Yeah, I think pretty much. He's very good, and there's no question about that. He, I believe, leads the league in defeats again, although not by 9,000, like he usually does,
right.
But by 1 or 2. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but he is the league leader in that stat like he usually is, and I think he's as impressive as he usually is. But it's the same problem that you always have with J.J. Watt, which is that in the way the NFL is, the fact is that no one defensive player can have the impact that a quarterback can have on the offensive side of the ball. So
that's true.
Even though J.J. Watt is a spectacular player, Houston had a below-average defense last year, and they're only 12th in defensive DVOA this year because you still have to have a secondary. And you can, if you double team Watt, you can still run away from him on the other side of the line, and he can't do it all himself.
Yeah, it's completely true. I don't have the defeats number in front of me, but I do know that Watt has 30 sacks and pressures this year, which is 8 more than Von Miller, who's the closest player to him. So yeah, Watt is still insanely good, but the point, like that you mentioned, is that he can't by himself make this team an exceptional defense, even if he's making them pretty good or a little bit above average, pretty much by himself. So I think the real point, again, is what we've said over and over and over again, which is that the AFC South just isn't very good. And right now, Houston is one of all 4 of the teams between 21st and 25th in total DVOA for the season. So what I'm hearing is that there really isn't much of a difference between the quality of any of the teams in the South. But hey, that's probably pretty good for the Texans because, again, they're tied with the Colts for the best record in the division. So does that put them in the playoff mix, maybe more so than we thought in previous weeks?
Well, I mean, winning games puts them in the playoff mix, definitely. Their schedule looks harder than that of the competition in the division, but it's not as much harder now because they got Cincinnati out of the way and, surprise, beat them.
Yes.
But still, it is harder. We have Houston schedule ranked 19th the rest of the way. Indy's is 26th, and Jacksonville's is the easiest schedule in the league over the last 6 games based on average DVOA of opponents. So that's why Jacksonville is still in the race a little bit despite being a game back. And the loss to Tennessee obviously hurts them for, if there's a tiebreaker for division record. But their schedule is easier the rest of the way. Indy's is still easier than Houston. I think some of the question here, first of all, there's always, you just don't know how teams are going to play. But also it's hard to figure out, how good is Indy with Hasselbeck versus Luck?
Right.
Because it looked like they were better with Hasselbeck until the Denver game when Luck played really well. And then all of a sudden, Luck got injured. So it's hard to know kind of who is the Colts offense with this quarterback? Who is the Colts offense with the other quarterback? When is the other quarterback coming back?
I was about to say that's the other thing is that we really don't even have any idea whether Luck's going to come back in 1 week or 6 weeks from now. So that makes it really hard to tell.
So that's what makes things, very up in the air. It's still, Indy is still favored in our odds, but I think that if we were to say, yes, Hasselbeck is playing the rest of the year, then I think it would be sort of tied between the two teams because with Hasselbeck at quarterback, it looks like Houston is a little bit better, but their schedule is a little bit harder than Indy's.
Yeah, the major obstacle for the Texans in terms of scheduling is that they still have to play the Patriots, which is obviously a big challenge. But apart from that, they do play their other 3 division rivals one more time each, and then they play the Saints and the Bills. So in a lot of ways, their destiny is in their own hands. If they beat up on their other division rivals, then they can potentially get in this thing. So
yeah, but that's 2 really hard games there. We get to the last 3 because they play the 3 division rivals in the last 3 games.
Correct.
But Buffalo is pretty good. I mean, one of the things about the AFC is because of the schedules and how that works, it looks like there's this big mass of teams at 5-5. DVOA does not agree with that.
Right.
DVOA says it's pretty simple. Kansas City, Buffalo, and the Jets are better than the AFC South teams. And Oakland has fallen a little bit, but they're also better than the AFC South team. So, at Buffalo is a tough game in December for a team coming from Houston. And then the Patriots the next week is a home game, but still, let's all be honest here about who's favored to win that.
Shocking,
So
I know.
that's 2 pretty strong likelihoods of losses that are on the schedule for Houston. And they have to go to Indianapolis. Of the 3 division games that they have left, 2 of them are on the road,
right.
at Indy and at Tennessee, before they end the season at home against the Jaguars. I've said this a few times already this year, my favorite choice for what should be the flexed Week 17 game, if you could imagine the AFC South coming down to Jacksonville at Houston, that would be awesome and kind of funny and unexpected.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what I think I'm hearing is even though pretty much all of the wildcard contenders in the AFC, except for Pittsburgh, are 5-5, it's pretty much win the division or you're not going to get in for the Texans, right? So if they have about a 33% chance of making the playoffs, I think I read in your ESPN article, is that like 30% is winning the division and just a few percentage is winning a wild card spot?
It's 36% division, 2% wild card.
Okay,
the wild card chances have gone up a little bit, but because the other teams in the AFC are better, combined with the fact that Pittsburgh is 6-4, and also better,
right?
And also better than their DVOA because Roethlisberger's healthy. I mean, honestly, I feel like with Roethlisberger healthy, I feel like the whole conference is playing for one wild card spot.
I've penciled the Steelers in for sure.
It's really unlikely that an AFC South team gets one.
Okay, well then let's pivot over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who really surprised me last week with scoring 45 points against the number 2 DVOA defense, the Eagles. I'm not sure everyone realized how good of a defensive team the Eagles had been. Even with that huge loss, the Eagles only fell to 6th in defensive DVOA. But that huge win gave Tampa just a massive jump in total DVOA. They went from 24th to 15th, which, Aaron, I'm assuming that's really a huge jump this late in the season.
Yeah, I mean, some of that has to do with how teams are grouped in the ratings, but it's still like almost 10 percentage points. They were at minus 13.2 a week ago. They're at minus 3.7 this week. So, yeah, that is a huge jump for Tampa Bay. They're now 18th in offense, 15th defense, and 23rd special teams. So sort of all-around mediocre, but hey, this year all-around mediocre makes you a wild card contender. So
absolutely. And I mean, mediocre on offense, I feel like is pretty good when you have a rookie quarterback running the show. And at least by some of the traditional statistics, Jameis Winston looks like he's been a pretty good rookie. The main thing that jumps out, obviously, is the 15 touchdowns against just 9 interceptions. And I don't feel like he's turned the ball over very much over the last month or 5 games or whatever it is. That's been talked about a lot. Just a 58% completion percentage. But, using some of the more advanced stuff like DYAR, how has Winston stacked up against the other quarterbacks in the league this year?
Okay, so here's the thing about rookie quarterbacks. We have in our memories what happened in 2012 when you had Luck, Griffin, and Wilson as rookies. And Griffin and Wilson were spectacular. And Luck, while his numbers were not quite as good, given the talent around him in Indianapolis, I think qualifies as very impressive in his rookie year as well. That's not the way it normally works.
Of course, yes.
Okay, especially because the top rookie quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks who are likely to get starting jobs are normally drafted by bad teams, so they have bad talent around them. So here's the scoop on Winston. Winston right now is at 304 passing defensive adjusted yards above replacement. That's 13th in the league this year. Okay, so that comes out roughly average. His DVOA is slightly above average. By the way, for those wondering, Marcus Mariota is at 126 DYAR, and his DVOA is slightly below average. But if you take out the game where he was injured in the middle of the game and he finished the game anyway, his ratings are roughly equivalent to Winston. So, when our Q-base, the new Q-base quarterback projection system thought Mariota would be much, much better than Winston, it looks like it didn't get Mariota wrong. It got Winston wrong. But Mariota is good too. It's just that the defense is, their defense has been really good, but they've had those Mettenberger games and the running game hasn't been as good. And so he isn't quite getting the attention that Winston is getting. But Winston, as far as Winston, what he's done so far, if the season ended today, right, if he got injured in the first play of the next game, he would have one of the top 10 rookie passing DYAR seasons we've ever measured already. That's how bad rookies are historically. Because he would be the 10th best rookie as far as passing DYAR. And I mean, that doesn't make him the 10th best rookie, period, because Luck would be behind him, and we know that the players that Luck had around him when he was a rookie and all, but you do not get very high as a quarterback as a rookie. So, he's on pace to be in, like the 6th or 7th best rookie season, around where Byron Leftwich was as a rookie or where Andy Dalton was as a rookie, a little bit below Peyton Manning and what Wilson and Griffin did in 2012. The best rookie quarterback by DYAR is Matt Ryan, and Ben Roethlisberger is second, and he's not going to get to those heights. Those are spectacular heights, but it's really rare for a rookie quarterback to even be just slightly above average. So what Winston is doing is hugely impressive. I'll also point out how he's doing it goes against what we see in most of the league right now. He's only got a 58.7% completion rate, I believe.
Right.
And he is doing it with the deep pass, not with the short pass. So the yards per attempt, yards per completion is higher, and the completion rate is lower. It's a little bit more old school.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a formula that can obviously work, and it might be somewhat influenced by the personnel that he has around him. Just out of curiosity, where does he stack up? Like, who are some of the veteran quarterbacks that are in his range this year?
Sure. If we look at passing DYAR, he is just below, but roughly tied with Eli Manning and Matt Ryan. But those guys actually are lower than him in DVOA. And he's slightly above Brian Hoyer and Tyrod Taylor. But those two guys are slightly above him in DVOA because they've each missed a couple of games. So that's sort of the area that he's in this year. And basically slightly above average. And I think for a rookie quarterback, especially given what our projections were for him before the season, that's very, very good.
So I mean, obviously the Bucs could be on the rise in future seasons if he's as good as this sort of trajectory could put him on. But I think there's a question this year whether the Bucs may have actually entered the playoff race. I mean, I guess the remaining schedule has a lot to do with this. They face the Colts, Falcons, Saints, Rams, Bears, and Panthers the rest of the way. So they're getting some of the weaker NFC South teams. They're getting the Colts, who may or may not have Andrew Luck at that point. Obviously, the Panthers could be a tough game, but if it's late in the season, it's potentially that they could have clinched. Who knows? So given all that, how do you feel they measure up in terms of percentage chance to make the playoffs at this point?
Well, I feel like I've been ride or die with the Seattle Seahawks all year.
I'm riding with you. So
Seattle's better than we think. Seattle's better than we think. Seattle's better than we think. So I wouldn't say that I favor Tampa to make the playoffs, but we do have their odds at this point roughly the same as Atlanta's, given the way that Atlanta has fallen apart. By the way, Atlanta hasn't fallen apart that much. They're losing close games, but they're losing close games to bad opponents. So they just look bad overall. I still think that it's going to be Seattle and Minnesota as the two wild card teams, but behind those two, there is sort of a good tight race with Atlanta and Tampa Bay, where either of those teams could jump up if Atlanta ever wakes up. I think the thing about Tampa is that the Carolina game being Week 17 has huge implications if Carolina loses before that. Because if it's Week 17, there's a very good chance that Carolina is going to not play its starters because they'll have the number one seed wrapped up, and that could put Tampa into the playoffs. Also, I got to say, for the future, when you look at the Tampa Bay offense, if Winston really is this much better than what we projected, this team has really nice future potential because they're starting two rookie offensive linemen. Their best wide receiver is in only his second year, and they've got a really good talented tight end in his second year who's barely played this year. There is a nice core here waiting to all mature together in future years. I think having the young offensive linemen the top drafted offensive linemen to go with the quarterback and the receivers is a really nice combination.
Yeah, they're definitely an exciting team. Okay, Aaron, we've got one more topic we want to talk about today, but before we get to there, let me remind everyone that the Off the Charts Football Podcast is presented to you by FantasyInsiders.com, your source for daily fantasy sports content. Their slogan is Accuracy Matters, and that shows since they've won the daily fantasy accuracy competition for the past 3 seasons. If you're serious about DFS or want to become serious, go to FantasyInsiders.com for free educational content and premium memberships. Aaron, this is sort of the major topic that you wrote about in your Week 11 DVOA column on FootballOutsiders.com, which I kind of insist everyone listening to this show reads every week. It's great. And this is kind of an interesting sort of thing that's happened where, the Patriots haven't lost, but then again, the Panthers haven't lost. And the Panthers have actually jumped the Patriots in percent chance to make the playoffs and percent chance to win the Super Bowl. So how did that happen exactly? I think there are a couple of things here, but starting with, do you actually think the Panthers are actually better than the Patriots at this point?
First of all, I'll point out they have not jumped the Patriots in percent chance to make the playoffs.
Go undefeated. My mistake.
Right. The Patriots make the playoffs right now in 24,999 of our 25,000 simulations. The Panthers only make the playoffs in 24,993 of our 25,000 simulations.
The Patriots are 7 times as likely to make the playoffs. Wow.
Compared to the Patriots when it comes to making the playoffs. No, I don't think the Panthers are better than the Patriots. Although figuring out how good the Patriots are is really difficult at this point because of all of the injuries and trying to figure out what those injuries mean, especially given that some of those players are coming back.
Right.
What I know is this. First of all, the Panthers have absolutely been trending upwards, whereas the Patriots have been trending downwards. The Patriots' best games were all early in the season. The Panthers' worst games were all early in the season. The Panthers' best game of the year was this week against Washington. So the Patriots' lowest single game DVOA of the year was last week, 2 weeks ago, against the Giants. So the trends have Carolina moving upwards, the Patriots moving downwards. Don't overestimate how important that is, because the fact is that the long term, it's important to look at the long term, not just the last 2 or 3 weeks. People covering the NFL have a habit of looking at the last 2 or 3 weeks like that's all that matters. It's not. But certainly they're trending towards each other, towards being equal teams right now. If you were to ask me right now, given the injuries the Patriots had, if the two teams were to meet right now in the Super Bowl, I think it would be a 50-50. They're equal. I think Patriots, the offensive line, men are back. Give them a couple more weeks to get healthy. Amendola healthy. With Edelman healthy in the playoffs, I think the Patriots are the better team. I also, by the way, this is a little bit of an aside, but thinking at matchups, and when you look at the Giants game, I think it's clear that the best way to beat the Patriots is to be a team that spreads the ball out on offense with a number of different receiving weapons and goes after the weak links in their secondary, especially once you get past not only Malcolm Butler, but Logan Ryan, and you get down to like Rashawn Melvin and Justin Coleman and stuff. And let's be honest, the team that's going to do that in the Super Bowl is not Carolina. The team that would do that in the Super Bowl would either be Green Bay or Arizona, especially Arizona. And it's also a reason to maybe even be a little bit worried about the Cincinnati Bengals, because their receivers, their secondary started to get hurt, but their receivers are all healthy. As far as Carolina and the Patriots and why Carolina has passed the Patriots in the race to be 16-0 or to win the Super Bowl, it's about schedule and the conference. Because the Patriots' future schedule is now harder than the Panthers' future schedule. A lot of that has to do with the way the Falcons
that's what I was going to say. It's like the Falcons keep losing, and all of a sudden they've got 2 more games against them, right?
Weeks 14 and 16. So now when you look at those 2 games, you say to yourself, oh, okay, well, those look a lot easier now than they did a few weeks ago when we had those 2 teams tied after 4 or 5 weeks. And then you get to the playoffs, and the fact is that there's more teams, there's stronger teams to go up against New England in the playoffs and possibly upset the Patriots than there are to go up against Carolina in the playoffs, because Kansas City looks really good right now, and Pittsburgh looks really good right now. You know, we know that the top competition is going to be Cincinnati for the Patriots and Arizona for the Panthers. But other than that, the big competition for the Panthers really looks like it's Green Bay. And the Giants are really kind of inconsistent. So you don't know whether, the Giants we know could be a great competition, or they could just lay down like dogs. But for the Patriots, you have not just Cincinnati, but Pittsburgh, Kansas City looking really good, Denver, if it turns out that Osweiler really is an improvement on Manning. And the fact is that either the Bills or the Jets, if they get in, could be dangerous as well. So the path to the Super Bowl is a harder path for the Patriots than it is for the Panthers. And that's why we now have the Panthers winning the Super Bowl in about 26% of our simulations, and the Patriots about 23% of simulations. And the Panthers also go 16-0 more often. They go 16-0 13.6% of the time, and the Patriots 10.5% of the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't remember if you wrote this on footballoutsiders.com or in your ESPN playoff picture article, but it's weird how in the AFC, like the AFC and the NFC have like corresponding teams, where like if Cincinnati is the Arizona equivalent, it's like Denver and Green Bay are both teams where there's like a lot of mystery surrounding them, but they're both potentially very good, but high variance. Then you have sort of the Kansas City, Seattle equivalent teams where the record isn't that good, but their DVOA is really good. And it sort of measures up that way, such that they have very similar teams, and then the AFC has one extra really good team compared to the NFC.
Well, 2 or 3 extra, honestly.
Well, that will actually make the playoffs is what I mean.
The thing about the 2 or 3 extra good teams is that they won't make the playoffs, but if they do, right? So if a really good team in the NFC misses the playoffs, if Seattle misses the playoffs, the team that will replace them is a team that DVOA does not think is really good, right? Minnesota, Tampa Bay, and Atlanta, DVOA feels those teams are all slightly below average. On the other hand, if Pittsburgh or Kansas City doesn't make the playoffs, the team that would replace them would be a team that DVOA thinks is above average, Buffalo or the Jets.
Right.
So that's part of it, too. It's not just the team we think is going to make the playoffs, but if the teams we think make the playoffs miss it, the other teams that'll get in are also better in the AFC than they are in the NFC. It just makes for a harder road in the AFC for the Patriots than the road in the NFC for the Panthers, even though I would say this week, you ask me which team is more likely to lose on the road and lose their perfect record this week, I do think Carolina is a little bit more likely to lose to Dallas than the Patriots are to lose to Denver.
I think I agree with that as well. Circling back a little bit to what the Patriots are now at this point in the year. Over the first 6 weeks of the season, the Patriots were tied for the 10th fewest sacks and pressures allowed on Brady. And since they've allowed the fourth most, or tied for the fourth most, and I know you mentioned that there is personnel that the Patriots have lost that'll be coming back later in the season, but I think you were actually at the Monday night game this week, and I can get caught up a little bit sometimes because I feel like Rex Ryan does creative things with pressure and such that can sort of generate that sort of problem. But in your mind, have the Patriots sort of lost something on the offensive line that is making them less dominant that you expect to sort of continue through the rest of the season?
I think Solder, as much as Nate Solder is only an average left tackle, he's a better left tackle than either Marcus Cannon or Sebastian Vollmer when you move Vollmer from the right to the left. That being said, they did get Cannon back this week. They did get Vollmer back this week. They were rotating guys in and out of the lineup. But either of those guys is better than Cameron Fleming or Brian Stork playing completely out of position at right tackle, or tight end Mike Williams playing right tackle, which they ended up with for a couple of plays until Stork came in a couple weeks ago. So the offensive line is going to be better. That's why it's hard to account for the Patriots' injuries, for example, in the playoff simulation. Yes, Dion Lewis is gone, but they didn't have Dion Lewis coming into, we didn't know what Dion Lewis was coming into the season, and we still thought they'd have a top offense. They didn't have Brandon LaFell the first 6 or 7 weeks. So you have to incorporate the fact that with him back, things get better. With Lewis gone, things get worse. With Edelman gone, things get worse. But Edelman will be back for the playoffs. The offensive linemen are back now, but offensive linemen have been moving in and out for the whole season, so it's like trying to judge the meaning of one specific lineman. Stork didn't play the first few weeks. Now Stork is back. But Stork's not starting, but he did come in and play center halfway through the game, and they rotate guys back and forth. And trying to figure out what the meaning of any of these guys are is difficult. I think it's safe to say that by the playoffs, with Edelman back and the offensive linemen a little bit more healthy, unless there are more injuries, which is always a possibility, that the Patriots will be a little bit better team than they are right now. But there's no question the offensive line has struggled the last few weeks. The stats show that. Offensive DVOA shows that. Their best offensive games were all earlier in the season. But this week, it looked like they were struggling, but when you account for the quality of the Buffalo defense, which is, is good against some things and bad against some things, but, there is a little bit of an adjustment there. They're strong against the run. When you account for that, they're stronger against the pass than they are the run, and the Patriots like to pass a lot. So when you account for the Buffalo defense and everything, this was an above-average offensive game. The only below-average offensive game the Patriots have had all year by DVOA was against the Giants, where they had to adapt to losing Edelman in the middle of the game.
Right.
It's hard to adapt to losing players in the middle of the game. It's a lot easier to game plan for the fact that certain players are going to be out of the lineup. So, I think that this Patriots team is not the juggernaut that people thought they were. They're not the juggernaut that you would expect from their 16-0 record, from the 10-0 record, the fact that they're going for 16-0. But, it's kind of equivalent to Carolina. The Carolina right now is 8th in offense and 2nd on defense. The Patriots are 2nd on offense, slightly behind Cincinnati by decimal points. They're 10th on defense. The big difference actually between the two teams is special teams, where the Patriots are number 1 in the league and Carolina is 28th. And that's the way it always is with the Patriots. The Patriots are always top special teams. They're top special teams this year, and that's going to be a big thing for them going forward. It wins them field position.
Yeah, last week the Panthers allowed a kickoff return for a touchdown again, and 2 weeks ago had a nullified penalty, which cost Ted Ginn a punt return touchdown. That's sort of epitomized their special teams plays so far this season. I'm not sure I really know what to make of the Patriots. Obviously, they're really good, but how good they are, I haven't really figured out. What I have figured out is I would really like to see a Panthers-Patriots game, not only just because that would mean that both teams are in the Super Bowl, but... Well,
my dream is that both teams are 18-0, and they meet in the Super Bowl so that no matter who wins, the 72 Dolphins have to shut up because they annoy me so much that I want somebody to go. It doesn't even have to be the Patriots. Somebody, please shut them up. That would be awesome. If Carolina did it, that would be great. Cam Newton winning the Super Bowl with a 19-0 season would be a hot takes inferno in the middle of a presidential election. Just try to imagine, okay, I don't want to get all into the racial issues here. Just imagine the inferno. Just imagine it. It would be an awesome sight to behold.
I mean, I really can't even imagine it. I was more optimistic than a lot of people about the Panthers before the season, but not that optimistic by any stretch.
I think the defense, I don't think people give the defense enough credit. We talk about Cam MVP, votes, Cam. Great. Cam is awesome. I love Cam. I think he's a great player. I think he's better than his stats because he overcomes the weaknesses on the offense around him. But that defense is studly. That defense is almost tied with Denver now for the best defense in the league. Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Josh Norman, K'Wan Short.
He's been incredible.
Lutulele, Charles Johnson when he's not being a jerk.
Johnson's coming back this week finally, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, that is a strong defense, man. People need to talk more about the Carolina defense.
Ooh, okay, great show, Aaron. I'm going to head off so I can get on a plane pretty soon, go enjoy my Thanksgiving. I hope you do the same. And for all the listeners, I hope they have a great Thanksgiving, and I hope they subscribe and join us again next week as we talk some more football.